The views and opinions expressed in The Fact Is with Hollis Grant are those of Hollis Grant and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Droids Canada Network. Droids Canada Network does not take responsibility for any content or position produced by Hollis Grant and his show. Listener discretion is advised.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Fact Is. I'm your host, Hollis Grant, and on today's episode, we are going to be talking about one of the show's favorite individuals. We've featured him numerous times in the past, droidscanada.com, for all of our back issues, episodes, and more. Fantastic content on there. Of course, you can always listen to Todd and Dan talking about everything about pop culture. But our favorite, one of the favorite individuals, Mr. Jagmeet Singh, king of TikTok. TikTok commie TikTok. Fitting, since we all know that TikTok is owned by the Chinese government. But why are we focusing on good old Jagmeet Singh, the same individual that cannot enter India because of his ties with terrorism? Well, this particular article is from the Epoch Times. Now, for those of you listening, may go, well, hold on a second. That's going to be right-wing news. This is not what you normally look at on the show. You normally give us the Communist Broadcasting Corporation of Canada. That's the real official news source. The one and only government approved, government paid for, and completely objectively free. In fact, so free and honest is their reporting that they have no misinformation. But of course, go back to our past episodes and to listen to some of those past episodes. Now the title here, and this is from an article taken from January 5th, 2023. And we hope that everyone listening had a wonderful holiday season. It's always great to sit back and reflect on the past year and the upcoming year, set some goals, think about how you want your future to go, and really put in some effort at the beginning stages of the crappy time of year, which is winter. Singh says NDP will push for more government control of internet over, quote, hate and misinformation. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says his party will push for government regulation of social media platforms to quell, quote, hate and misinformation, end quote, adding that private companies should not hold sole responsibility for content management on their platforms. So, no, private companies should not hold sole responsibility for content management on their platforms. Catering to big business, catering to Facebook, or companies such as Twitter. Posting something on those particular websites where no longer Facebook is going to be responsible. No, they want to push for the individual that posted it to be responsible for what they put. The government has a responsibility to play in making sure social media platforms are adhering to proper guidelines around misinformation around hate, Singh told reporters during a virtual press conference on January 4th. Now, as we continue on with the article, as we continue on with the conversation, and as you, the listener, go on to read or to hear other sources, and especially when it comes to government, I want you to pay close attention to what is the definition of misinformation. What is misinformation? Is misinformation giving the wrong information, and how wrong can it be? Because if we're looking at certain things such as the coronavirus, we can say there has been a lot of misinformation from our own Dr. Theresa Tam. On a past episode, we did talk about the glory holes. We did talk about having sex with your partner was recommended by Canada's top doctor to have a mask on to prevent the spread of coronavirus. However, we now know that masks do not stop the spread of coronavirus. We were told that the vaccine will prevent the spread of coronavirus. That was not true. So is that misinformation? Or is it only misinformation when someone that the government does not like says something? We've been saying for a long time the responsibility to keep people safe from misinformation and radicalization can't rest in the hands of private companies, he added. I'd like to have Mr. Jagmeet Singh define what misinformation and radicalization is. It has to be the government taking responsibility, and for a long time we've said the Liberal government hasn't done the job of making sure platforms are following the rules around making sure hate and misinformation aren't being spread. Singh went on to say the NDP is going to continue pressuring the federal government to properly prevent hate and misinformation from being spread on social media platforms. Bill C-36, an act to amend the criminal code, was the federal government's most recent attempt to directly regulate online content relating to hate speech. The bill died after the 43rd session of Parliament and was dissolved in 2021, so the end of the year, for Christmas holidays. Had it been passed, the bill would have created new hate speech offenses and restored the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal jurisdiction to hear cases of alleged violations of Section 13 charter offenses. The bill proposed fines up to $70,000 Canadian for internet users deemed responsible for content that is, quote, likely to foment detestation or vilification. So, what is detestation? And it's defined as intense dislike. And the dictionary example would be Wordsworth, detestation of aristocracy. So, a gentleman named Wordsworth really hates rich people. And that's the example that's given if you're typing that in Google and pulling up the definition. Vilification, abusively disparaging speech or writing. The widespread vilification of politicians. Now, an individual could put up a picture of Justin Trudeau in blackface or brownface with the caption, Justin Trudeau was a drama teacher and thought that dressing up in blackface was appropriate, and now he's the Prime Minister of Canada. Well, of course, that is meant to get a rise out of people to think, hey, this guy is a bit of a jackass for doing this. Maybe this guy's an idiot. Or you could put down a speech of him saying, water box thing, I drink water out of a water box. We've played that clip on this show, again, past episodes on Droids Canada, with the intent of those clips to show the particular individual look like a moron. Well, by that definition, then we're accountable for the detestation, intense dislike of an individual. Yes, there is an intense dislike for incompetence. There is an intense dislike for governments that have more scandals than any other government. In fact, there was another scandal that broke this week. We haven't covered on the show, but it was a contract that was awarded during the ArriveCAN scandal. And the ArriveCAN is that application when citizens were to return to Canada, to fill out, to monitor, to see where they were. They had to take the test, and I had to do the test. I had to quarantined for 14 days as I left the country for 4 hours and went across the border to shop at Target and have dinner at the Olive Garden. And was quarantined for 14 days and had the government call and verify that I was home. Well, the scandal is that there's quite a few millions of dollars that was paid to one particular consulting firm. One particular firm got that. They have ties with liberals. And it was to go to committee, and the committee was shut down. So, like the WE scandal, with billions of taxpayers' dollars gone missing, there was to be a committee, and that is being closed down. So yes, there is an intense dislike of corruption. There is an intense dislike of incompetence when dealing with taxpayers' money. So by that definition, $70,000 fine should have been applied to this particular show. Singh has previously said in the House of Commons that the Liberal government has taken no, quote, concrete steps towards censorship of online hate and misinformation. In fact, there is no law proposed to tackle online hate. There is no special representative named to deal with Islamophobia, he said June 6, 2022. Now, we could go into and have a show about Islam and take this to a religious podcast where we talk and dive deep into what does the religion teach, but we'll leave that for another day. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said in November 2022 that his government is committed to stopping harassment and violence online. While always ensuring and defending free speech, we must make it clear that it cannot be okay to bully and attack people online, he told reporters November 14th, while adding that big technology companies have a role to play in addressing online harassment and violence to ensure trust in technology. In March, Heritage Minister Pablo Rodriguez announced a panel of 12 experts that would make recommendations to the government on curtailing online harms through new legislation. The panel concluded its meeting in June saying they wanted the government to counter disinformation, calling it one of the most pressing and harmful forms of malicious behavior online, while acknowledging it would be hard to define the term in law. Another piece of legislation, Bill C-11, is currently pending state approval and, if passed, Senate approval, if passed, will grant the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, CRTC, power to regulate major streaming platforms like Netflix, YouTube, and control what content is available for Canadian viewership. They don't like it, you can't watch it. And that is at the hands of a bureaucrat. Remember, the people that work for the CRTC are not elected. They're not elected, but they're government bureaucrats. Conservatives have criticized the government's pending Bill C-11, saying its reach is too far and that it will restrict free speech and expression online. What we're talking about here is something that would limit people's freedom of expression and limit people's freedom to view the content they wish to view or to not view the content they wish to view, Conservative MP Blake Richards in the House on June 20th. That is a pretty broad, sweeping piece of legislation. Heritage Minister Pablo Rodriguez, the bill sponsor, previously defended the legislation, saying it will make Canadian content more accessible and make it easier for people to find homegrown Canadian music and stories. The bill's expressed objective is to promote content monetized by Canadian producers for viewers within the country. The bill has received criticism from both large streaming platforms and the United States federal government, both of whom say it will unfairly discriminate against non-Canadian content. Canada's International Trade Minister, Mary Nig, recently said the federal government is ensuring the bill will be trade compliant following a meeting in November with U.S. Trade Representative Catherine Tai. Now, Canadian content is important. Keeping jobs in Canada or producing shows and stories about Canada and playing music is important, and I support Canadian content. But it can't be the only offering. Canadians should be free to watch what they want, and if they don't want to watch the garbage that's being produced, they shouldn't have to be forced to watch the garbage that's being produced. Canadian companies need to produce better content. And there hasn't been much Canadian content that's worth viewing. But where the problem lies is in the definitions and how will and who will determine what is hate speech or violence or what is acceptable to put out. Can I put out that I think an individual is a complete moron and is incompetent? Or is it me being hateful? Is it me being mean? Can I put a religious text that now will start to go into potentially hate speech for reading a religious text? How will the government now look at religious texts? And will those sacred texts be allowed to be shared online, even though that they do have harmful and hateful, by definition, messages in them? So how would the government police religion? I'd like to thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of The Fact Is. I've been your host, Hollis Grant. As always, feel free to reach out to us. Twitter, Facebook. We love to hear the feedback, and we love to hear your thoughts as well. Hope that you have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much for listening.
Salsa shark! We're gonna need a bigger boat! Throughout history, they have been a part of our Canadian life. Men and women who have made their mission to entertain their fellow man. They've worked hard enough. Isn't it time they had their own podcast?
Droids Canada. This podcast would be great if it wasn't for the internet trolls.
I don't bother them, and they don't bother me.
I could do without the bad reviews in the iTunes store.
You have that podcast with that guy who was at that Comic-Con in the last year.
You should hear the barrage of the stupid questions I get on our SoundCloud account.
What do you mean there was coughing? How am I going to hear a podcast with coughing?
You feel a lot better if you just rip into the occasional guest.
You're a host who doesn't get paid. You can't just do anything you want while you're recording.
What kind of podcast are you running here anyways?
Droids Canada Podcast present.
You think anyone can see us down here?
Why, you think you want to have sex or something?
Can we?
Droids Canada Podcast. The only show to rip off a Clerks trailer.
You hate people!
But I love Comic-Cons. Isn't it ironic?